Hi everyone, it's time for your week 3 wake up call in Humanities 103 Mythology. Okay, before we move on to our next unit, I just wanted to sum up what we've covered the first 2 weeks. So, really, in a nutshell, what we did was zero in on a good, workable definition for what we mean by myths. And this is what we're going to use for the remainder of this semester. So, I took this right out of that reading that you had, definition of the word myth. So we're going to say ancient narratives involving the relation of humans and gods that attempt to answer the enduring and fundamental human questions. And there is that list of those questions. And so we also read about the idea, where did this sort of pervasive idea that the word myth means falsehood? And so that could be considered one, definition of myth, but for our purposes, that's not true. The word myth really has nothing to do whether something is objectively true or false. The truth of myth doesn't lie in its historical accuracy, but what it expresses about what we believe, either personally or as a culture. And so that's why, and many of you really figured this out in your discussions, that we can point to stories that many people find extraordinarily meaningful and even, will say that they believe they are literally true, such as stories from the Hebrew Bible. But by our definition, those really are myths. So not, saying in any way that they are less than true, less than meaningful. It really is up to each one of us as we evaluate these for the meaning that they have in our own lives. All right, so here is the course schedule for this week. So you see now we're moving into Module 2, which is about pantheons. So pantheons are sort of a foundational idea of mythology. And for the next 2 weeks, we're going to think about what is a pantheon, what does that word mean, and look at some sort of representative examples from different cultures around the world. So for this week, by Thursday, please work through the material in Module 2, Week 3, and post the reading response portion of discussion number 3, Analyze a Pantheon. And then by the end of the day on Sunday, please post your peer response to that discussion. So before we embark on Unit 2, let me go over the objectives for this unit. So by the end of this unit, in 2 weeks, you will have learned the definition and purposes of pantheons as they appear in myths from the cultures that created them. You will understand the relationship between the roles of pantheon members and the values, behaviors, and environments of the people who created them. And this is really crucial. So it's not that we're just going to read some stories about, all the Greek gods and goddesses or the Norse gods and goddesses, but what we really want to do is peel back the layers and figure out what was it about this particular family or group of deities that tells us something about the cultures that created them. So for example, why would a culture have an entire god or goddess devoted just to fertility? Or why would they have a deity devoted to war or agriculture? Or it goes on and on. So what do those roles say about the priorities and the needs of that particular group of people? And then we're going to wrap up this unit by having you demonstrate your understanding of the roles and functions of pantheon members by creating an original pantheon and analyzing its function. So that is the Pantheon Project, which is described under the Assignment tab, if you want to click over there and take a look at it, or it's also located in Week 4, if you want to kind of skip ahead and look at that. But we will talk about that in more detail next week. So now we're going to the actual module. Here's Week 3, and remember each one of these is a link that takes you to more information. We have a couple of readings. Actually, I have to tell you, those first two are Wikipedia entries. Now, I know if you've taken maybe English 101 or, English when you were in high school, you probably heard somebody say, no Wikipedia, that's not a credible source. And that's entirely true if we're talking about, writing um, a, a composition paper or a research paper. Wikipedia is not a credible source to support a research claim because remember, anybody can dive in there and change it. But for our purposes, it's a great source of information. We're just gathering information that by and large is fairly accurate, and it's just a really comprehensive list of information like the pantheons that exist around the world. So we're going to go ahead and use Wikipedia for this particular situation. And then we have a couple or three of those crash course mythology videos. And there you have your the link to your discussion number 3. So really quickly, of course, I'm not going to go into detail because you're fully capable of reading the instructions, but discussion number 3 asks you to go to that Wikipedia entry, list of pantheons, and you will find an exhaustive list of cultures and religions that each have a particular pantheon. And you'll click on that, whichever one you choose, it's up to you. You'll read about them and you'll choose 3 members of that pantheon, and then you're going to do a quick analysis, and there I've given you the things that I'd like you to look at. So what is the name of that deity? What are their attributes or important characteristics? What role or roles does that character play in a culture? So why would people, say, pray to them or offer offerings or sacrifices, or why would they build temples to them, or whatever rituals were involved? Why? What do they want this deity to do for them? And what do you think that those attributes and roles of this character tell you about this culture or religion? So a lot of this is just going to be, your own common sense. You're going to look at this and say, if I were in that culture and I chose to worship or honor that deity, what would that be saying about me? So kind of just think about yourself as a human being, and what do you think? Okay, well that about wraps it up for this week. So you have those 3 things, or excuse me, no, you have your readings and then your discussion posts for this week. I have Zoom office hours. Those will be Tuesday, that's September 7th, between 10 a.m. and 12. And there's the Zoom link. You can just click on that at any time between those hours, and you'll jump right into the Zoom space. You may or may not need the passcode, but I've included it there. And if those times or that day doesn't work for you, I'd be very happy to either chat with you on our course space or set up a Zoom meeting. Okay, well, this should be a fun week. I hope you enjoy the materials that I've provided for you, and I look forward to reading your responses to that discussion post.